boys and girls and children of all ages. Fat Bastard Wannabe Buddha coming at you today. Today will be something interesting and something novel. I'm trying my first film critique, or not critique, or just open thoughts on a movie I just recently seen. I was very fortunate to have people in my life that value my opinion so much that they actually wish to pay me to go see a movie. I know, that's shocking. Some people even paid me to draw stuff for them every once in a while. Sort of sad. But anyway, I'm very indebted to the person that gave me $10 in order to go to see a movie, and so much so that I decided to film a little criticism of the movie I went to see. The movie in question is basically Elysium. Elysium is a follow-up to Neil Blomkamp's District 9, which is a very great film that I thoroughly enjoyed, and it was not properly received and sort of dismissed as a moral polemic about apartheid. And all the film criticism that you can find about it, that it was a story that was a little bit too late for its time. Yes, the apartheid critique is in there, and it's a good chunk of the thing, but also what is in there is the fluid nature of borders and how the first world deals with the third world. I find that narrative still pertinent to today, and that's what was the main discussion of District 9, is how first world people interact and deal with third world refugees. Or do they just hoard them off and put them in ghettos like we have a tendency to do? Most people didn't see that narrative, and the same thing is happening with Elysium. Elysium is being pretty much dismissed as nothing more than a morality play, a moral polemic on universal health care. I find that sort of interesting. I didn't know. I'm surprised that the right wing didn't pick up that it's a giant morality or moral polemic for, immigration reform. But I guess Neil Blomkamp, even if he ain't very subtle, they're very dense, because you can see both of those narratives throughout this play. That it is a moral play about universal health care. It is a moral play or a moral polemic about immigration, the rise of inequality. It's got a lot of stuff in there. But unfortunately, in this society, we don't want to go to the theaters for any other reason to be entertained, to lose ourselves, to live and reside in our own little Elysium or field of dreams. That's a very apt title for the film itself. We want to retire into the sanctity of the movie theater and have our little worries washed away from us and not be confronted or actually have to think about anything. If it blows up real good and they flash a good smile and there's enough TNA in there, we're a happy camper. But unfortunately, that's not why you go see a Neil Blomkamp movie. You go there to actually think. And moral polemics are needed in societies. The great pulp writers provided this for humanity, but we've gone away from that. From Dickens and Charles Dickens to Dostoevsky himself. I don't remember them being very subtle, which is the main criticism against the Elysium, that it's not subtle. Why should it be subtle? The society which we currently inhabit is not a very subtle place. It's a pretty blatant society in which, if you are of a certain class and of a certain social status, your life is radically different than somebody else who is not born into the Lucky Gene Club. And that's the dirty secret about American society, that there is a cap. There is a limit to how high you can climb, and that's getting more and more lower and lower and lower as the great unwashed and the middle class are now more and more frequently rubbing elbows with one another, as we have realized that a large portion of society is surplus labor and we have no value to them. They cannot produce anything for us or give us anything that we need. I found all that in Elysium. It's from the ride over in which Rush Limbaugh was arguing on the talk radio about the minimum wage and how it shouldn't be raised, to on the way home to Love Doctors repeating the same argument. We don't have much empathy in this society anymore. We don't care about anything anymore other than our own selfish needs and wants and desires. And that's unfortunately the same character arc that Matt Damon carried throughout the whole thing, who has a very limited character arc. He doesn't want to do anything or value anything other than his own life. Here and there, he cares about his friend Julio and his girlfriend Frey, or as a young child, and at the end, he makes the right decision. But he also is a very selfish individual, and maybe there's nothing wrong with that. There was a recent discussion in Jacobian magazine about the left maybe needing to rediscover selfishness, and to point out that it is in your self-interest to have universal health care. It's in your self-interest to have a minimum wage increase. It's in your self-interest to have less spending on defense and more spending on education. So maybe a selfish attitude, if it's properly directed, would be a benefit to society. I'm not unsure about that. I'm less certain about that than I once was. But I ramble. Getting back to Elysium. Elysium really is an interesting film. Neil Blomkamp's cinematography is best. His view of the future is the most realistic. I enjoy just the look of the film, just the look of the future that he presents, which is very bleak, very dystopian, but very modern. It really does look like a passable future. That this is where it possibly could be headed. That we could be heading to a society in which the very few live in gated communities, and the great multitude are living on the refuge of past industrialization. Oh, that sounds like modern era currently. I do highly recommend it. What I do find interesting also that I wanted to point out is, despite all the great criticism and that it's a moral polemic and how it was easy and simplistic, and they didn't notice the biggest steal that Neil Blomkamp did, and that was basically he stole the Christos mythos. He basically stole the Christ mythos once more and reinstituted it on the screen. Matt Damon lives amongst the poor and walks amongst the poor and lives amongst them, and he engages in the world, and finally he saves humanity, and he offers humanity eternal life, and all it cost him was his life. That was the message that Blomkamp stole that nobody pointed out. He basically ripped it off Christ. Most films do, but we don't recognize it anymore. And that's sort of interesting. Maybe a topic for another day about how modern Christianity has been destroyed. But I wanted to make this really quick and simple. I very enjoyed Elysium very greatly. I think it is actually a great moral polemic. I think the society needs more moral polemics. And I think its message is true to date. Complete with that the mercenaries needed in order for them to maintain their suburbia are uncontrollable. That the little Kruger character comes back and bites them in the backside. That's the way it is. They're not going to be able to control all the wet works and all the hired guns they need in order to make sure that they can live in their gated communities. And that's one of the things that I took from the film. Another thing I wish everybody would understand, and it's my own little moral polemic, is for every moment, for every second that you're not out there in the fields picking cotton, every millisecond that you're not slaving away for your bread and butter, somebody else is out there. For every ounce of leisure time that you have, for every happiness that you have, for every joy that you have, somebody else is paying your burden. And we don't talk about that. No one ever sees that in society anymore. They hide and they mask their reality. They escape to their own Elysium, their own field of dreams. And that's a sad thing. That's my moment to talk today. Thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, favorite, however you do this on this YouTube. Curious what other people's takes. Thank you.